The evening light was fading, casting long shadows that intertwined with the creeping darkness inside. Alara adjusted the strap of her satchel and stepped through the heavy oak doors, the groan of ancient hinges echoing through the cavernous interior. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of dust and leather, a perfume that instantly enveloped her senses. Towering shelves stretched endlessly upward, their wooden beams creaking softly as if whispering secrets of centuries past. Alara's footsteps were muffled by the thick carpet of faded Persian rugs, worn smooth in places by generations of hurried scholars. She had been drawn here not by assignment or obligation, but by a restless curiosity that gnawed at her since her first day at the university. The library, neglected and shrouded in mystery, was rumored among students to be a place where the boundaries of knowledge blurred, where some claimed the books themselves held more than ink and paper, that they were alive, capable of changing their own stories. Skepticism had always tempered Ilarore's imagination. She was a scholar, after all, trained to seek evidence and logic. Yet tonight, as she ran her fingers along the spines of the books, she was struck by an odd sensation. The titles seemed to shimmer, the letters faintly shifting beneath her touch. She paused, focusing intently on a particular volume, an ancient leather-bound book whose cover was cracked and fragile. Opening it carefully, Alara's eyes scanned the printed words, but they did not remain static. Paragraphs subtly altered, sentences rearranged themselves as if responding to her gaze. The words danced on the page, forming new meanings, new narratives. A chill ran down her spine. She pulled the book closer to the flickering candlelight on the table and began to read. The tome was filled with cryptic symbols and coded passages, a cipher that seemed to shimmer between languages and eras. Alara's heart quickened. Her years of studying literature and ancient scripts had prepared her for many things, but nothing like this. Hours passed unnoticed as she transcribed the shifting text, piecing together fragments that hinted at crimes yet to occur. The cipher was a map of futures, grim, violent, inevitable. Her breath caught when one prediction described a murder on campus, with details so precise they could only have been written by someone who had seen the event unfold. But what chilled her most was the final entry, a description so vivid and personal it could only be about her. The heavy footsteps of librarian Marlowe approached, breaking the silence. He was a tall, thin man with silver-streaked hair and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of the library's secrets. His voice was low and cautious. "You should not be here alone at this hour, Miss Whitlock. The library is not as it seems." Alara looked up, the candlelight catching the intensity in her gaze. "The books, they're changing, and there's a cipher predicting crimes, including one about me." Marlowe's expression darkened, a flicker of something unreadable passing across his face. "Some stories are not meant to be read, much less changed. You tread on dangerous ground." Determined, Alara closed the tome with a resolute snap. "Then I have to understand, before it's too late." As she left the table, the library seemed to shift again, shadows lengthening and twisting as if the building itself was alive, watching her every move. Alara's mind raced. Questions spiraled, fears deepened, but beneath it all, a stubborn hope burned bright. She would unravel the cipher's secrets or be consumed by them trying. The shifting pages whispered promises of dark truths and perilous knowledge, and Alara knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere within the labyrinth of the rewriting books lay the key to her survival, if she could find it in time. And so, with the weight of unseen eyes upon her, Alara stepped deeper into the library's shadows, the first page of her own story turning inexorably toward an uncertain fate. The afternoon sun filtered through the fractured colors, casting shifting patterns across her open notebook where the cipher sprawled in meticulous script. Around her, the great stone halls echoed with the faint rustle of pages turning, whispered footsteps, and the distant hum of a world that seemed oblivious to the strange phenomena she was uncovering. She had spent hours poring over the ancient tome she'd found the day before, the cryptic symbols dancing just beyond easy comprehension. Yet patterns began to emerge. Certain sequences repeated with variations, hinting at a code layered within the text that was rewriting itself. It wasn't merely a set of predictions, it was a living narrative, adapting, shifting, and Elora suspected, responding to something unseen. Her fingers traced the delicate ink lines as she wrote out the cipher's fragments, every so often glancing up at the shelves around her. There was an unsettling sensation, as if the library itself was watching. Ilara shook the feeling away and settled back into her work. A sudden soft creak of footsteps startled her. From the corner of her eye, she spotted librarian Marlowe. He stood at the edge of the stacks, his gaze fixed on her with an intensity that sent a chill through her. The man was an enigma, his exact age impossible to gauge, his presence both a comfort and a threat. Known as the gatekeeper of the library, Marlowe was the embodiment of its secrets. His dark robes seemed to absorb the light, and the ivory-masked symbol etched on the ring he wore caught what little light there was, gleaming faintly as he adjusted his spectacles. Ilara's pulse quickened. Was it mere coincidence, or was Marlowe monitoring her progress? She closed her notebook slowly, not wanting to draw attention, and rose to leave. As she turned, Marlowe's eyes seemed to pierce through her, unreadable and cold. Outside the stacks, the tension did not ease. Jasper Lang, a fellow literature student and her academic rival, awaited her in the common room. His skeptical gaze met hers as she entered, the murmur of other students fading as he stepped forward. "Whitlock," he began, voice low but carrying enough to draw curious glances, still chasing ghosts in those old books. Ilara's jaw tightened. "It's more than ghosts, Jasper. There's a cipher, a code predicting crimes. You wouldn't understand." Jasper smirked, crossing his arms. "Sounds like paranoia to me. You're letting your imagination run wild." The challenge was clear, and the room's atmosphere thickened. Ilara felt the sting of isolation but met his gaze steadily. "If you think this is fantasy, prove me wrong." Their verbal duel attracted a small crowd, stoking the embers of rivalry that had been smoldering since their first year. Ilara felt the weight of skepticism pressing in but refused to back down. Later, in a small cafe near campus, Ilara met with Mina Solis, her closest ally and a student activist with a sharp mind for technology. The cramped space buzzed with the hiss of the espresso machine and the clink of cups, a mundane backdrop to their extraordinary discussion. "I ran some background checks on the digital archives," Mina whispered, sliding her laptop across the table. "There are files about the library's history that have been edited, like someone's tampering with the records themselves." Ilara leaned in, heart pounding. "So it's not just the books. The whole narrative is shifting." Mina nodded, her bright eyes serious. "We need to be careful. If the librarian is involved, we're up against more than just a secret society." Together, they pored over the data, their alliance a fragile beacon against the encroaching shadows. Back at the library, Ilara felt the weight of unseen eyes. The cipher's whispers grew louder, and with every page that shifted, the past and future blurred further. Suspicion of Marlowe hardened into conviction. She had to uncover the truth behind the gatekeeper's cryptic presence. But as tensions with Jasper mounted and her circle of trust narrowed, Alara realized she was stepping deeper into a labyrinth of secrets, where every answer only led to more questions. Could she decipher the cipher before it was too late? Or was the library's rewriting narrative already sealing her fate? The shadows lengthened, and the whispering books awaited her next move. Alara Whitlock's breath fogged faintly in the dim light as she carefully opened the brittle pages of a manuscript she'd stumbled upon, one that seemed to shimmer faintly with an otherworldly aura. Her eyes narrowed behind round glasses, tracing the delicate lines of an illustration, an ivory mask, its expression serene yet unnervingly blank, carved with intricate symbols that matched the cryptic cipher she had been obsessing over. A sudden noise made her start. The soft footsteps of someone approaching echoed in the cavernous hall. She quickly hid the manuscript beneath a pile of innocuous books as Professor Alden Grey emerged from the shadows, his tall, gaunt frame casting an imposing silhouette. His silver hair caught the faint light, and his piercing blue eyes seemed to bore into her very soul. "Alara," he said quietly, his voice low yet urgent, "some knowledge is a poison disguised as a cure. You must understand what you seek can unravel more than just mysteries." Alara felt a shiver run down her spine, the warning heavy with unspoken threats. "I need to know," she whispered, clutching the manuscript closer. "If the Ivory cult controls the rewriting, then I have to stop them." Professor Gray's gaze softened for a moment. "Be wary. The cult is not merely a secret society. It is the guardian of a narrative older than this university itself. They believe in predestination, in the story already written. To challenge them is to challenge fate." The words hung in the air as he retreated silently into the shadows, leaving Alara alone with a swelling sense of dread. She glanced around the darkened aisles, the silence broken only by the faint rustling of pages shifting on their own. It was as if the library itself was watching, waiting. Later, as she wandered the narrow corridors, Alara's senses heightened. Every creak of the wooden floor, every whisper of wind through cracked windows seemed amplified, feeding her paranoia. She felt eyes on her, hidden behind the countless stacks of books. The ivory masks she had glimpsed in the manuscript seemed to manifest in the shadows, symbols of control and manipulation. Her fingers brushed a carved symbol on a wooden bookshelf, its ivory sheen gleaming faintly in the gloom. The same symbol was etched into the margins of the ancient tome she had found days before. It was a signature, a mark of the cult's presence. Alaros' mind raced. The cult's reach was vast, their influence woven into the very fabric of the library and the university. They were watching her, anticipating her moves. Yet, as fear curled in her chest, it was tempered by determination. She could not turn back now. That night, she sat in her small dorm room, the manuscript open before her. The cipher's characters seemed to swim and shift, rewriting themselves again. The final crime, the one that chilled her to the bone, loomed closer, with every line she deciphered. But with the cult's shadow creeping over her every step, Alara understood that knowledge was both her weapon and her curse. A knock at the door startled her. Mina Solis, ever energetic and loyal, slipped inside with a reassuring smile. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Alara forced a smile. "Something like that. I've found references to the Ivory Culture group behind this rewriting, and Grey warned me to be careful." Mina's eyes darkened with concern. "Then we need a plan. You're not alone in this." Together, they pored over the manuscripts, their whispered conversations mingling with the distant echoes of the shifting books. Outside, the library seemed to pulse with a life of its own, the boundary between past and present blurring, the story rewriting itself with each passing moment. Alara knew the path ahead was perilous. The ivory cult's mask concealed countless faces, and trust was a fragile commodity. Yet, beneath the weight of dread, a spark of hope flickered. If she could unravel the cult's secrets, perhaps she could rewrite her own fate before the final page was sealed. The library's shadows deepened, and the ivory mask watched silently, waiting to see who would hold the pen next. The air smelled faintly of aged paper and dust, a scent that Elora Whitlock had come to associate with both comfort and creeping unease. She sat hunched over an ancient tome, its leather cover cracked and brittle, the pages yellowed and delicate. But as she read, the words began to shift beneath her gaze. The tale of a long-forgotten war melted away like mist, replaced by a cryptic prophecy that spoke of shadows creeping from the ivory halls. Alara blinked, her heart pounding. Was she imagining it? She closed the book, only to reopen it moments later. The text was different again, each reading revealing a new layer of the same enigmatic story. The library around her seemed to breathe with the same unreliability. Shelves groaned softly, and distant footsteps echoed without source. The library was no longer just a sanctuary of knowledge. It was a living entity, unpredictable and alive. Alara's fingers trembled as she reached for her notebook, scribbling frantic annotations, trying to fix something fluid into permanence. Later, nestled in a shadowed alcove, she found Mina Solis waiting, her auburn curls pulled back loosely, eyes sharp and expectant. Mina had been the steady presence throughout Elora's unraveling reality. "It's happening again," Elora whispered, her voice barely audible over the soft rustling of pages. The text's there changing. Not just small errors or edits, but whole narratives twisting and reforming. Mina leaned closer, her expression serious yet encouraging. "We'll figure it out." Together, they spread out books and notes between them, a chaotic mosaic of clues and cipher fragments. Mina's fingers danced over her tablet, cross-referencing digital archives with the mutable texts before them. As they worked, the library seemed to grow darker, shadows creeping along the walls like living ink. Alara's mind raced. The shifting texts were no accident. Someone or something was orchestrating the changes. The Ivory cult, with their obsession for narrative control, suddenly felt more real and menacing than ever. The weight of predestination pressed down on her, threatening to crush the fragile hope she clung to. When a sudden breeze fluttered the pages of an open book, revealing a hidden passage that spoke of threads of fate pulled by ivory hands, Alara gasped. The cult's influence had seeped into the very fabric of history recorded in these books. The lines between past, present, and future blurred terrifyingly. Exhausted but resolute, Alara looked to Mina. "We have to stop them. If the books keep changing, if history is rewritten by their hand, no one will be safe." Mina nodded, her eyes steady. "Then we fight back one page at a time." As twilight deepened, the shifting narratives of the library pressed in on Elora's consciousness. But amid the disorienting flux, a new determination ignited, a fierce resolve to reclaim her story and rewrite her fate. The battle for truth had only just begun. The walls whispered secrets, and somewhere deep within the labyrinth of books, the Ivory cult watched, waiting for the next move. And Alara, heart pounding, knew that every word she read, every cipher she cracked, was a step closer to a destiny she was desperate to change. But could she trust the words that told her story when the pages themselves refused to stay still? The library's shadows lengthened, and the shifting lines beckoned her forward into the unknown. The smell of dust and old parchment was thick in the air, mingling with the faint metallic scent of the iron hinges enclosing the library's restricted section. Her breath came shallow and rapid, fingers trembling slightly as they traced the carefully inscribed cipher symbols that now felt less like script and more like a map to impending doom. For hours she had pored over the cryptic sequences, the patterns twisting and folding upon themselves, much like the labyrinthine corridors of the crumbling university library around her. Each symbol unlocked a new fragment of a violent prophecy, the latest decoded segment spelling out a crime so brutal and immediate it sent a shiver of cold dread racing down her spine. The timing was no coincidence. Alara's gaze darted toward the calendar pinned to her desk. The predicted date was only days away. A deep, insistent pulse of urgency thrummed through her veins. This was no longer an academic puzzle. It was a looming catastrophe that threatened to unfold amidst the unsuspecting campus. Yet the burden of this knowledge weighed heavily on her. The more she delved into the cipher, the more isolated she became. Jasper Lang, her academic rival and skeptic, had grown increasingly vocal in his dismissal of her findings. Their last encounter in the bustling student cafe had been acrimonious, Jasper's sharp tongue slicing through the ambient chatter as he challenged her with biting skepticism. "Alara, you're chasing shadows," he had snapped, eyes glittering with incredulity. "This cipher nonsense reeks of desperation and fantasy. You're letting obsession cloud your judgment." Her retort had been equally fierce, but beneath the bravado, a fissure had cracked open between them. Jasper's disbelief was a wedge driving them apart, and Alara sensed the subtle but undeniable shift in their dynamic. The rivalry that once spurred her now threatened to sever a crucial thread of support. Late into the night, Alara found solace in the company of Mina Solis. In the cramped dorm room, bathed in the cold blue glow of a laptop screen, the two friends sifted through digital archives, Mina's nimble fingers dancing over the keys as she unearthed hidden clues that might connect the cipher's ominous predictions to actual campus events. "There," Mina whispered, pointing at a series of encrypted messages buried deep within the university's network. These could be communications between cult members. Ilara's heart pounded. Every new discovery tightened the noose of urgency around them, yet also illuminated a fragile path forward. Mina's loyalty was a lifeline, a beacon of hope amid the encroaching shadows. But outside, in the vast silence of the library's mezzanine, an unblinking presence observed. A figure cloaked in shadow lingered quietly, the faint creak of aged floorboards betraying their vigil. The ivory mask glinted faintly in the pale moonlight filtering through stained glass, a silent reminder of the ivory cult's ever-watchful eyes. Ilara left the library unaware of the gaze that followed her, the echo of footsteps swallowed by the cavernous space. Paranoia tightened its grip, threading through every whispered corner of her mind. The cipher's edge had cut deep, thrusting Alara into a perilous dance with fate. Each step forward brought new revelations, but also new dangers. How could she unravel the final threads of this deadly tapestry before the violent crime came to pass? And at what cost to herself and those she held dear? As dawn broke over the ancient spires of the university, Alara sat at her desk, the cipher spread before her like an open wound. The final pieces awaited, and so did the unknown enemy lurking just beyond the page. Her fingers tightened around the pen, poised to write her next move in a story that was no longer hers to control, but one she was determined to rewrite.